This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear Micropub in Southbourne-on-Sea. No loud music, no TVs, and no ringtones. Just good ale, good conversation, and good times. Just like a pub used to be. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
Here come the cherries and we're heading for the top of the tree. Bournemouth is a team that's going to show Division 3. Here come the leaders and the scorers at the Saturday, showing how to win the Southern way. So we sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. While you're out there winning, hear the shouting and the singing. We sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. Here come the Cherries, here come the Cherries, here come the Cherries, number one.
Hello and welcome to All Departments. Our beloved Cherries rounded off the greatest year in the club's history with a draw at home to Crystal Palace and defeat to Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium. Here to reflect on the outcome of the festive fixtures is our old friend, George James. George, how are you?
Good, thank you. Lovely to be back.
Good to have you back. Now, we got 1 point and no goals from our two fixtures over Christmas. I suspect that Eddie Howe and the squad will be disappointed with that. Should we be disappointed as fans?
I don't think you can. I think Arsenal will win the league, so I think you've got to write off that one as naught, in my opinion. And you can't beat Mesut Ozil when he's in that form. But Palace, I think he'll be disappointed because we created the chances to win that and didn't take him. So I think you can argue that we should have had 2 more, but certainly not as much as 4.
No, when you look at the bigger picture, as it were, over the last few weeks, we've managed to, well, very much steady the ship, make progress, and we've got on 20 points, which I certainly didn't expect at the start of December. But then we're going into games now. I mean, both games really. Obviously, like you said, Arsenal, it's a tough one to get anything there. But we're going into games all the time now thinking, can we win it? Which I think is quite a significant change in the mentality of the team and the supporters than we saw in the autumn. And yeah, so against Palace, like you said, we had enough chances in that game to win it. Although 0-0 wasn't a bad result against a team that are doing well and have won a lot of away games. I mean, overall, I thought it was a fair result. Although if you had to maybe say there should have been a winner, it probably should have been us, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I agree. It would have been us. But, I mean, if you create 10... Well, we had 10 shots and 3 on target. And although there wasn't a really clear-cut one, we probably just edged it. But I think Crystal Palace are a really good team. And what I took from that game as a positive more than anything is, if you remember earlier in the season, some of the defending against like Tottenham and Man City away, well, it was like the Benny Hill sketch, and they were just absolutely solid, limited them to pot shots and distance. And that's, that punching I rate, and I think he's really good. Zaha, I think, is great. And the chap on the other wing as well is also really good. So, I mean, I think I'd have taken a draw, and they're 4th in the Prem, so 5th in the, well, I don't know, they're a good side. So I'll take a point from the 2, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was pleased overall. It's just maybe a slight disappointment, especially when it ends 0-0. You want it to be goals just for the drama. But yeah, I think probably going into the game, most people would have taken a point because that would have put us on 20, which it did. And, well, we'll come on to Arsenal in a little while. It was a strange afternoon, I thought, for Glenn Murray. He didn't have his best game. He's had some good performances for us. He's scored 1 or 2 important goals. He's had other games where he's been forced to play in a way that doesn't really suit him. He needs the ball into his feet. He doesn't really have enough pace to maybe play in the style that we want to play in, and he's been probably seen a little bit more time playing up front on his own than he would have expected when he signed for the club before Callum Wilson was injured. And he also had, obviously, the thing with Palace, their fans were singing his name, well, they were singing it more than we were, before the game, during the game, and after the game. And he had a good chance in the first half, but it wasn't really his fault when he missed the header because Matt Ritchie got in his way. They kind of both went for the same ball. And but then in the second half, he had what appeared to be, and it wasn't very far away from where I was watching from in the main stand, a gilt-edged chance when Dan Gosling played him in. Gosling might have shot himself, but he chose not to. And I mean, I know you've been away for some of this season, but what have you made of Murray's contribution? Because he seems to split opinion amongst the fans, and I thought, I don't know, it must have been very strange for him. He said he wasn't going to celebrate. Some people don't like it when players don't do that. I think it possibly is due to what has happened at their old club. I mean, Harry Arter celebrated against Charlton at the end of last season, but they released him. So what do you expect? And also I saw him hugging some of the Palace subs as he returned to the pitch at half time. And I don't know. I don't want to be too hard on him because I think that he's definitely got something to offer, and he could score a few more important goals for us this season. What have you made of Murray so far?
Well, I mean, even when I was away, I was lucky enough that I watched all the games. So I have seen all of them this season, and I think he's been very good when he's had not someone up front with him, but close support from midfield. And I don't feel like we gave him that against Palace. I feel like he was a bit isolated. And because he's being asked to play and pass it off and then get into the box. And I don't know. I just feel like he's a bit of a square peg in a round hole at the moment. And he's getting there, and he's certainly improving. You could tell that against Palace with all his flicks. They weren't always coming off, but that's an improvement from the start of the season. But now Tomlin's back. If we're stuck in that position again where King's injured, I'd like to see him play with Tomlin up front. I think that'd be a good pairing. And with the not celebrating thing, I mean, I don't begrudge him that even. Like, I think that's absolutely logical because he's like a club legend there. He scored like 31 goals in the season. He had a serious injury, came back from it. You know, scored 7 goals at the end of a Premier League season that were really important to them. Like that's you cannot do that at a club and not, you know, try and preserve your legacy. But then, as you say, it's absolutely right that Harry Arter should celebrate for a club that released him. Like it's different. So he's obviously still going to have friends there because it was only last season. So I don't think that was a factor. And the chance he had that you were referring to, where he just sort of didn't put enough power on it, did he?
No.
I don't think it was that. I certainly wouldn't call it gilt-edged. So I mean, I'm not Eddie, but I'd play him with a bit more close support, and I think he's a great signing, to be honest. I do rate him, and I rate his contribution over the season. I think has been pretty good as well.
I think he's a good example of what we have to perhaps understand as Bournemouth supporters in terms of what Eddie Howe can do with a player. We see a lot of players come in and they take time to adapt to the style of play and what Eddie does and what he expects out of the team. And I think that there's something of a pattern forming in the last few seasons, and obviously it's mostly been an upward trajectory, but we seem to start off slowly at the start of the season when we've got a few new players, and we always seem to wobble a bit in the new year. Perhaps sort of February time has always been the month that's been pointed towards. And these are the times when Eddie's trying to... Well, one reason for those things could be that that's the time when Eddie's trying to mould the new signings into the style of play and find a way to make it work, which also adapts to the new players' strengths. Do you think there's any truth in that?
I do, but not... I don't think so with Murray. I think it's just been a situation that's been forced because of the injuries. Because I don't think that if you think of how Kermigan was used last season, I think I presume that Eddie would envision Murray in a similar role, but now we've had so many injuries, it's just not been possible. So I don't think Eddie bought Glenn Murray to turn him into Callum Wilson, or Josh King. But I think when you've only got King left as a fit striker and Kermigan, who's basically a similar player, a similar style of play, I think he's been sort of put backed into a corner with Murray at least, and I think Murray's probably realistic about that as well. He's never going to be that, super fast, sprinting up the channels. He's a goal poacher, and he's really good at what he does. So I think it's been caused by injuries, and I think if he stays another season and gets to play in the way that Eddie signed him for, I think he'll score a lot of goals.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's more to come from him, and he could score more important goals as the season goes on. And like you said, if he sticks around and he's still here next year, he's probably still got a few more goals in him, another good year, and Eddie can get the best out of him like he does out of so many players. We mentioned Harry Arter. Harry had a running battle with Wilfried Zaha, and he was carded in the first half and I was a long way away from this, and I haven't seen it since on the telly, because they didn't show it on Match of the Day, and I haven't managed to find it anywhere else. He launched a heavy challenge on Zaha on the far side of the pitch from where I was. And I knew it was serious because Michael Oliver, the ref, and all the players immediately reacted and started running over, and there was the usual pushing and shoving. Zaha reacted somehow. There was talk it was an elbow. Like I said, I haven't seen it. And, it was... I don't know if it was as bad as James McLean at West Brom the previous week, which...
Definitely not.
Yeah,
should have gone to prison for that.
I was hammering McLean on the podcast the week before, as everybody else was, and I hoped, when Harry did that, it wouldn't be as bad. And I haven't seen it again, but if I did see it again, I hoped it wouldn't look as bad as that. Did you have anything like a decent view of that incident?
No, I didn't. But there's two crucial things that have happened. I've seen on Twitter Palace fans basically saying Zaha is consistently a dickhead and has an argument every week. Okay, so that's why it escalated. And the second thing is Pardew said in his interview it was a yellow, and he said he slightly mistimed it. And you can bet if it actually had been debatable or a red, Pardew would never have just given us the benefit of the doubt and said that. That's not how managers work. So the fact that Alan Pardew said it was a yellow and it was a good decision by the ref makes me think it was just, there was nothing in it. And he slid past him anyway. It's not like he took him out and went through him. So I think it was something of nothing. I think if it had been a major incident, they definitely wouldn't have skipped it in Match of the Day in a game that had so few incidents anyway.
Mm. Yeah, and of course it was Pardew. I didn't realise this until Pardew said it in his interview, that he was the one that released Arter when he was at Charlton. So Harry probably had that in the back of his mind, but then you don't need much of a reason for Harry to wind himself up for a game of football.
Just the point on that, right? This is something that you're talking about with like Eddie moulding players, right? Harry Arter, when he signed, for quite a while was fairly terrible. His attitude stank, obviously, on the pitch. He gave the ball away a lot. He did. I don't know if you remember him doing all these ridiculously stupid passes on the edge of the area that lost possession all the time. He did not look good enough for Charlton where they were at the time. Okay, what's happened to Junior Stanislas is one of the greatest miracles in modern football. Right?
I was going to come on to him because I know you've had quite a few harsh words to say about him in the past.
Right, but I don't even take any of them back because his performance at Villa last year was like trying to watch a blind man play Scrabble. It was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life in a Bournemouth shirt. It was like Crawley, it was like Barnett at home under Quinn. It was just unbelievably bad. And then you look at him this season, he's a completely different player. I remember Francis didn't have a clue what a formation was for the first 6 months at Bournemouth. Like he just used to just sprint around the pitch like a kid full of blue smarties. It was nuts. And all these players now look like solid Premier League players. And it is genuinely extraordinary what's happened.
It is said time and again how good a manager Eddie is, and it's becoming more widely known. I would say this, but I think he's the best manager in the country. You could say, well, Wenger, obviously a brilliant manager. There's one or two others. Klopp, we'll wait and see. But, Eddie is showing, again, what enormous talent he has. And I I think that with him there's more to come as well. But yeah, his ability to take a player and make them so much more than what they were previously, and to do it over and over again, is clearly an indicator of the huge talent that he has. And I mean, it's easy to sort of say, well, if he had a load of money, think what he could do, but I'm not sure if it would really work like that. I think that he needs to be able to have his fingerprints on a player, as it were, as opposed to signing huge names and then letting them get on with it with maybe a little bit of man management.
Yeah, well, the key thing is that part of the reason that Bournemouth consistently play above their level is because Eddie has stuck with these players, moulded them. But Harry Arter and Stanislas especially, when they're interviewed in the programme, they talk about how much they've improved under Eddie, and that's why all these players are happy to sign these 3.5-year contracts, and long contracts, and just not be looking for a transfer and more money, it is a testament to how. But you're right, I don't think the real, like, let's say Eddie went to United, right? Worst case scenario. Actually, worst case scenario is Tottenham for me. But let's say he went to United and he walked in there. How is he going to deal with someone with an attitude problem who's on an extraordinary amount of money when they're already supposed to be quite good? They're on the decline. Eddie thrives with players that are sort of on the way up and improving. So I don't know. He's an extraordinary coach. We know that, but I don't know if he's ever been, in terms of like man management and problem players and all this stuff. You look at it and they all seem like quite nice, the players.
Yeah, there's always the talk about how harmonious the dressing room is, which is something that always makes me scotch in my own head some of the rumours about the players we're going to sign. You think there's no way we're going to sign Berbatov because it would just not work in the dressing room. And so some of them, I mean, there's obviously quite a lot of rumours flying around at the moment. You kind of think, I saw Thomas Ince mentioned today. You think, well, he looks like a good player, but you get the feeling there could be some attitude issues. I don't know that, but you sort of think, well, Eddie's not going to go for him. I mean, I could be wrong, but we'll wait and see. I mean, another player who's risen again after quite a dip in his career is Dan Gosling this season. He was obviously not really featuring for us last season. He was in the shadows at Newcastle after his time at Everton proved to be reasonably successful. I think he's playing well in the midfield, but there was one point when I thought he went down unnecessarily in the box trying to get a penalty, and the ref waved it away. I was actually surprised the ref didn't book him. Do you remember that incident?
Yeah, but I mean, my dad said the same as you, but it depends on whether he's appealing for it or not. And I was at the other end, so I couldn't see whether he was appealing. But it's often like on Match the Day, I think this as well. Like, if a player falls down in the box under contact, it doesn't need to be a foul. And players fall over outside of the box all the time under contact, and it's just not giving it a foul. Like, it doesn't. If just because someone falls over, it does not in itself make it a penalty. But I think if players fall over, they're aware they've lost possession and they just desperately, like, out of embarrassment almost, just try and look at the ref and out of hope. So I don't know. I didn't see the incident, but I think we need to get out of this mentality that and this is a much broader issue than just that, but we need to get out of this mentality that if someone falls over in the box, it is automatically a penalty.
Yeah, it's strange because sometimes you see free kicks given for stuff outside the box that then doesn't get given inside the box. And then other times you see, like you said, players just going down under a bit of contact and that is ruled as a penalty. So the interpretation of the laws by, well, it is obviously the referees, but by the football public in general is illogical. And it doesn't make a great deal of sense when you compare one incident to another, both inside and outside the box. And I guess it was ever thus, but it's I mean, there's always been room for improvement. There's definite room for improvement on that. Although I thought Dan Gosling, he didn't appeal, I guess, much. But it from where I was, it didn't look like a very convincing attempt to win a penalty. So maybe I'm doing him a disservice. Maybe he just did go down under a bit of contact, and that was why it didn't look very convincing. If he was trying to win a penalty, then don't want to encourage this sort of thing. It's always frowned upon, but he needs to work on his act a bit. Eddie brought Tequila Ranty on. I mean, this is a man who perhaps is the exception to the rule about Eddie improving a player. So far, anyway. I mean, I'm still waiting for him to surprise us. Junior Stanislas has surprised us this season. TK came on. I always watch him quite closely. The crowd are up for it when he comes on because he's so well liked. He's such a nice guy and all that. And after the game, I saw quite a bit of praise for him on the social media, but I wasn't that impressed. I thought he did well when he came on at West Brom, and he held the ball up well and was quite effective and gave us an out ball. But against Palace, I essentially thought he was back to, unfortunately, the TK that we've seen most of the time since he's signed. His first touch was suspect. He ran into trouble quite a lot with the ball. His positional play wasn't that good. He had a chance, but he snatched at it when he might have taken over a little more time, bit more composure. What did you think of his performance in that game when he came on?
Right. He's made 42 appearances for Bournemouth now, or mid-40s appearances. I don't think I've ever, outside of cup games, when you've got a lot of the players who just, Eddie himself, not really bothered, I don't think, to this day, we've seen enough to judge him. Because whenever he comes on, he's at the top of a 4-5-1, and he's a borrower in professional football terms. He is a borrower. He's 3 foot nothing. He's not a 4-5-1 player. I just think it's the square peg in a round hole. I truly believe that if/when he leaves, he'll do really, really well because he'll have a manager that is in a position to play him in a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3 or has that close support with him. I think he'll do really good and do really well, especially in the Championship. I mean, he's... I don't know. I think he's had a really rough time because every time he comes on, the team are tired. It's not lack of effort. I like him. I agree. I don't think he's been the player that. I don't think he's justified the money he spent. But then that's not his choice. So I don't think he's at any point not tried, and I think that's why he's so popular.
Yeah, he always gives it his all. He's almost too desperate to do well. I think that's why he sometimes runs into trouble with the ball. He's just kind of so motivated to make an impact that it kind of backfires on him somewhat. But I think what you say about not seeing enough of him is a fair point, because when players are run in the team, then they can find their feet, and we've seen it quite a few times. And again, referring to Stanislas and the way he's come on this season is a good evidence of that. We haven't really seen that with TK. So yeah, I mean, I hope you're right. I hope he does. Well, I don't mind if he stays with us, but I don't think he's going to get much of a chance to play. But if he went to a Championship team and they think, we're getting this guy from, the Premier League and we're going to stick him in the team and play him every week, then yeah, it could go really well for him. And then we'll be like, we never should have let him go. But at the moment, poor old TK is still waiting for, maybe one more magic moment before he does move on, although we'll see what happens next month. And that was about it really, I think, for Palace. We said earlier it was a game that in some ways demonstrated our progress. I think we would have lost that game, perhaps in October, maybe even the first half of November, but our whole performance, our defensive display, and our mentality was very much, we're not going to lose this game, and we could win it. And as we said right at the start, we perhaps should have won it. We probably had the better of the chances and the majority of the possession. Yeah. So, fair enough. And then onto Arsenal. Again, I thought we went into the game with a genuine conviction that we could compete, unlike when we went to places like Manchester City, when we played at home to Tottenham. Well, especially City, I thought we went there and really did look like a team that just been overwhelmed by the entire situation, the stadium, the players on show, the history to an extent, although City's isn't quite as glorious as Arsenal's. At Arsenal, we lost, but I didn't think there was any of that. I thought that we, lost 2-0, so could have been better. But overall, the account that we gave of ourselves against a team that, like as you said, are very much in the hunt for the league title, it was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to be the only team that go there and lose, basically. I think most teams will go there and lose this season, especially if Ozil keeps it up and Sanchez gets back into form. If they don't win the league this year, it will be the most Arsenal thing ever. It will be it will be amazing for them to not win the league. Because Man City season's like an exploding clown car. Leicester City, I mean, if they win it, I would love them to do it, but they'd win it with half the resources. There's no reason Arsenal shouldn't win it this year, in my opinion. So to go away to to a team that's definitely going to be challenging at the end of the season and play like we did, I think is a tribute to the players. But the big thing was the improvement, because City was like frenetic chaos in the defence. We were wasting possession, giving the ball away. It was a team who were like panicking. Felt they looked out of their depth. It felt like they were out of their depth. And then you went today, for the first 20, 25 minutes, you wouldn't have been able to tell who was even at home. So I mean, I don't think it was realistic to go there and try and win. It's not like a team like Chelsea or Man U who are struggling for goals. Like, that's a team banging form. If you ignore Boxing Day. I think it was a good performance. But at the same time, if Theo Walcott didn't shoot as if he had a bucket on his foot, I think it would have been 4 or 5-0.
Yeah, it could have been. They had better chances. They didn't make the most of them, like you said. I think it's hard to come away from a game that you've lost 2-0 thinking that was a good result. But yeah, I think for all the reasons we've been discussing, I mean, City's the one definitely to point at. That was just a sense of fear pervading the entire performance. It was.
It was worse. It was panic. It was a sense of panic in possession. They didn't seem to know what they were doing. Overcome by the occasion. The whole performance was indicative of like an absolute minnow. Like, just lambs for the slaughter. That was how we played it at Man City, and it was depressing. But no one came away. I came away from the City game thinking, oh my goodness, that was a disaster. And then I came away from there thinking, fair enough, close enough game against potential title winners. And Mesut Ozil could have won it on his own, to be honest. So I mean, I think either him or De Bruyne will be Player of the Year this year. So I think you can just write it off as fair enough, really. A good performance, but fair enough. As you say, it's weird to be like 2-0 down and you're thinking, oh, this is all right.
What did you think of Eddie's selection? Because he's obviously got to manage the players through the Christmas fixtures, and Stanislas and Josh King have been having, I think, hamstring issues, and that can rule them out for longer if they're not very carefully managed. So he played Stanislas in the Palace game, gave King a rest, and then played King in the Arsenal game, and Stanislas came on at half time. So King came into the team. I was glad to see him back in the team because we want to see the pace up front. I thought he had quite a difficult time of it altogether. They seemed to marshal him really well, and he struggled against the Arsenal defence. Eddie said afterwards that Josh may not have been 100% fit, and that had an impact on his performance. He hadn't trained much recently. Mark Pugh came in. I was glad to see him back in the team. He's fit again. I did have a feeling he'd be back in. Eddie took him off at half time. We also persisted with our style of play, which has been much discussed and in some quarters maligned until recently. I didn't think Eddie would do anything else. He has shown total conviction in that style of play, with the odd tweak here and there, I think, to accommodate the personnel and, to some extent, the opposition. But we went, I think, with a game plan to try and outpass potentially the best passing team in the league. Do you think that was the right thing to do?
I don't know if we went to outpass them, but with playing style, I don't know if he's got a choice there. I mean, you look at the players we've got. I don't know what. You can't convert them overnight to just smacking it up. Or I think it was the right tactic because try and keep the ball. And to be honest, I think if we hadn't played 48 hours earlier, it would have been a much closer game. But the intensity we're playing with this season, I don't know how they do it. I know they're professional sportsmen and athletes and all that, but there are all these distance statistics and running and most intense team in the league and all this, and then 2 days later you've got to go to Arsenal. I just, it'd just be exhausting. So I think the playing style was right. Selection-wise, I think it was actually quite intelligent picking Pugh instead of Stanislas. Because Arsenal's right-backs are insanely fast. And if you look at how Pugh gets a cross in, it's by these Cruyff turns, trickery, dummies. And if you look at how Stanislas gets a cross in, it's just pace and then smack it in. And they both work, but I think Pugh would have been more effective. I think that was how the decision was made. Because Pugh does 9 Cruyff turns and then a dummy and then gets it in the box. Stanislas will just either get it in first time or just go in for a goal kick. So, they both played well this season, but I think that might be why he was picked. That was my reading of it. I think Gosling looked tired, actually, against Arsenal. And then King, not going to get much change against Gabriel and Mertesacker. The worst thing about Arsenal is our defending of set pieces was just abysmal. And they're not even good. Like the goal, Gabriel's goal, he basically, I don't know what he did to Harriot. It was like he trodden it, not Harriot, it was Daniels actually.
It was Charlie Daniels, yeah.
Just left him for dead by running.
They wrestled very lightly just before the ball was coming in, and Charlie was goal side. Yeah. And then in a flash, Gabriel was past him, and Charlie was just standing there. Yeah. And Gabriel had his head on the ball, and it was in the net. I mean, the quality of the delivery from Ozil was obviously a factor, but you could see Charlie just put his head in his hands. And from where I was, it was down our end, and it was only when I looked back and saw what actually happened and how quickly Gabriel managed to get away from Daniels and just leave him standing like his feet were nailed to the floor and head it in. Because at the time, all I saw was Gabriel rise unchallenged to this free header, and then the ball was in the net. Yes. And I mean, it was. Daniels. He was at fault to some extent for the second goal as well. And in a week when there's been little whispers, Roy Hodgson should be having a look at him. It was probably, it's unfortunate, but it was probably his worst game of the season. And it was. Our defending at set pieces is almost always one of our weakest points. And it was absolutely awful, really, for that goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Gabriel is an absolute monster. I mean, if you're wrestling with him and you're Charlie Daniels, you're going to lose. That's not a slight on Charlie Daniels in any way. But you look at who they have in the box from a corner: Mertesacker, Giroud, and Gabriel, and you've got 3 massive guys who are going to really, really challenge you in the air, and you're going to put Cook on one of them. You're going to put Francis on the other one, and you're going to put, who's next after that? We don't have tall players, do we? I mean, you're going to leave one of them with something that doesn't match up. Arter, Gosling, Ritchie, Sermon maybe, but these are, compared to Gabriel, they're not going to really be realistically challenging. But the quality of the delivery was amazing. But what I think that's more or less irrelevant, because you look at throughout the season, we've got the worst record in the Premier League from set pieces. 13 out of 34 goals conceded from set pieces. So it's not just it was an amazing cross; it's a big problem.
Yeah, and we continued to struggle. There was another. This was Ozil, like you said, the first 20-25 minutes was pretty even, and then Ozil began to come to the fore, and he'd already, before the goal, sent in a chipped cross, I suppose, which Walcott did manage to spring the offside trap, but missed the ball. And then Ozil also, as we've just discussed, took the corner, which led directly to the goal. And then he also played another similar ball in to Walcott from the one he missed. And this time, Walcott got to it, but it went straight into Boris because he was at the angle. But the best one was another corner. We were wobbling at the corners all the time after this because we were basically clinging on, weren't we, from the goal until half time. And I was just praying we'd go in at 1-0 and have a chance of steadying the ship. Was when they got another corner. Ozil took it, of course. Another great delivery. This time Gabriel got to the near post. Got was essentially a free header, which went to the back post, hit the post, and then Mertesacker did this kind of comedy miss where the ball came straight to him, and it was a bit sudden, and he headed it wide, and that was it was
it's a highlight of the season for sure. Like that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a football stadium, and I mean that sincerely. Like if you watch it full speed, you realise he had zero chance of doing that, because you can predict a bounce off the ground. You cannot possibly predict the flight, bounce and speed of something that hits the ground, then the post, and then comes straight at you. So if you watch it full speed, you realise he has no chance. But the replay makes it look like he has all the time in the world. And it's just so funny. And even as he's going down, he's got his hand on his forehead, cursing himself and all this. It is hilariously funny, but it's indicative of a major problem with set pieces.
The White's Bear Micropub on Southbourne Grove is a proud supporter of AFC Bournemouth and sponsor of all departments. Head to the Bear for real ales, locally produced food and plenty of good conversations about the Cherries. Check out www.thewhitesbear.co.uk.
So we clung on to half-time, kept the score down to 1-0. It was quite a nervous 15 minutes or so after the goal. Before we go on to talk about the second half, there was very much during the game an attitude amongst the Bournemouth supporters around me that the Arsenal fans were very quiet, considering there was 3,000 of us and in excess of 55,000 Arsenal fans, or certainly people that had come to the game to see Arsenal more than they wanted to see us. And there's been some suggestion that the stadium is quite quiet considering how many people are in there at a lot of fixtures. I know you've seen them play quite a bit over the years that you've lived in London. I also think that it's somewhat, it's a Pyrrhic victory to think that we won the singing contest, because you don't get any points for that, unfortunately. But is it something that you think is true about the Emirates in terms of atmosphere, or is it just that away fans tend to be more vociferous, and when you're stood amongst the away fans, it just feels like you're out singing everybody else in the stadium anyway?
I mean, it is a problem. It is a problem at Arsenal, but it is a problem at a lot of huge grounds. And Tottenham always say how much louder they are than Arsenal, but I guarantee as soon as they get what is basically a copy and paste of Arsenal Stadium, they're going to have exactly the same problem. Because there's a few things. It's a really high roof. I don't think they have like a true singing area anymore. It's not because it's like a bowl. I don't think like Bournemouth have the North Stand, Tottenham have obviously a specific singing area. When they moved, I don't feel like that was defined clearly enough, because there's a corner right opposite, so diagonally across the pitch. That's the loud from where the away fans were. The opposite corner to that is where most of the singing fans sit. So you're not going to hear them anyway, because it's a really high roof. And it is a quiet stadium, but I don't know what they can do apart from having like a singing zone or something. It's difficult. But they're much louder for games where I've seen them play, Man United and in the Champions League, and they are normally louder than that. But I don't know what they can do when they've got a stadium that big, really.
No, I mean, it's easy for us to get ourselves up for a game away at the Emirates. It's a big thrill for us going there. We've never played them there before. We've never played them in the league before. For them, it's like, you can imagine the majority of their fans think, we're only playing Bournemouth. It's quite difficult for them to get excited, considering all the traditional rivals they have and all the big games that they play in over the course of a season. That won't be one that lingers long in the Arsenal memory. So it doesn't really matter. It's just something I wanted to touch on because it was discussed, and there were some Arsenal fans afterwards I saw on the social media saying, "Oh, great stuff from the Bournemouth fans and all this, and I wish our fans were so passionate." And there is the opinion, and it's difficult to tell whether it's true or not, amongst some perhaps more traditional football fans, that in the new stadiums for the big clubs, there's a lot of what they describe as tourists who are just like along for one game and have bought a ticket, and it kind of dilutes the atmosphere and all that sort of thing. And it's interesting to perhaps think about what that would mean for us going forward in terms of us building a new or bigger stadium and the impact that it could have. But I'd be surprised if we got to the stage where we have a huge mega 60,000 plus seater stadium and people travelling from all parts of the country and possibly the globe to see us for a one-off game. So I think we're a long way from having to worry about anything like that. Anyway, on to the second half. Eddie brought Junior Stanislas on for Mark Pugh, and I thought Junior was reasonably effective when he came on. I thought Arsenal were very keen to deal with him as soon as he got the ball. We didn't play that much differently in the second half. I thought we did okay. Josh King was released at one point. It was probably the best chance he had to use his pace and to run at the Arsenal defence with the ball. I think Andrew Sermon got a bit of time in the midfield and played a nice ball through to him. King was away, and it was like all our fans were up and thought, he's in here and he's going to either have a good chance to shoot at goal, or he's going to pass. I think Junior Stanislas was lingering in the middle, and it hit Gabriel. He blocked it, and it came to nothing. Do you think King should have done better with that one?
Well, I mean, it looked a better chance because of the angle and where everyone was in the ground, but that chance was gone, in my opinion, the second he let it bounce, because it was a ball that was delivered curling away from goal. If he'd have taken his first touch and gone towards the D before it bounced, I think he probably would have finished it, or it would have taken a very good save to stop it. But because he let it bounce, it drove him so wide, and I don't know if he realised how far ahead he was, and then he had to wait and let the defenders get back to cover. So I think the chance was gone as soon as he missed the bounce, basically, or misjudged the flight, or maybe he hadn't seen it. I don't know, but that was what killed the chance. So I don't think he could have done much more when he let it bounce, but I think he probably should have taken it before it bounced and just gone straight for goal, rather than wait for everyone else and cross it. Because he's a 4-5-1, a 4-4-2, maybe you can excuse it going wide. But so half chance really in the end. Yeah,
I thought it was a shame because when the ball went through, I thought, he's in. It's actually working this time. but it came to nothing in the end. So it was too bad. Eddie took Dan Gosling off. You said he thought he looked tired. I also think that he was on 4, or he is on 4 yellow cards. I don't know when he's a wiped. I remember when we were in the Football League, which was for like all the years I've been supporting the club, apart from this one. They tended to get wiped around this time of year, and then you'd be back to 0. So I don't know if that was part of Eddie's thinking in taking Gosling off. He brought O'Kane on. O'Kane's featured a little bit more recently. He did okay against Palace, and he did all right. No worse than anybody else, certainly, against Arsenal. But then they scored again in the 63rd minute, and I could see this was, well, it's easy to say with hindsight, I could see this was going to be a goal from the moment Charlie Daniels lost the ball. And it felt like this happened right in front of me from like the angle I had looking straight down the pitch. Charlie was bombing forward as he does, and he just took his eye off the ball for a split second to look up to see, which pass was on. And the ball must have gone about 6 inches away from him, maybe not even that. And Bellerin just pounced, and he was away. And Charlie was just left standing. And then there followed this kind of almost balletic sequence of passes. Bellerin found Ozil, and then with our players looking on as spectators, Ozil and Giroud exchanged passes. Giroud's, I think, was a back heel and flicked it through what looked like a very small gap between Sermon and, well, one of our defenders. I'm not quite sure who it was. And then Ozil finished really calmly. I mean, that was a very good goal from Arsenal's point of view. But, yeah, I think it was just unfortunate what happened with Daniels. And it just shows how easily you can get punished for those little mistakes. And that happened deep into the Arsenal half as well, didn't it?
Yeah, well, that's... I mean, whilst in the circumstance Daniel did cause it, I think there were enough players back by the time that they got there that I don't think... Yeah, it cost us possession. I don't think it cost us a goal. So, if you look at that flick from Giroud, it's a flicked, curling, sort of side foot back heel, and it is absolutely exquisite. It's one of the best. It was an absolute. I watched it about 8 times on a go. I mean, if there was a more beautiful goal they scored against us this season, and even the way it just stops in front of Ozil was just. It was a fantastic goal. It was a truly beautiful goal. But the fact that Giroud's passed it through 3 players with his back heel implies that it wasn't the lost possession that got the goal. It was the quality of the passing. So, yeah, it cost us possession. I don't think it cost us a goal. But I'm not sure a better goal will be scored against us this year. There's nothing you can do about it. And even the finish, so many players, even Walcott would have tried to smack that or volley it, and he just basically sat Boric down and just passed it in. Just fantastic goal.
Yeah, he looked like he had ice in his veins for the finish, didn't he? The way he just, like you said, he just tidily put it into the place where he knew Boris wouldn't have a chance. And the whole, I mean, Ozil isn't a player who looks busy. He looks, and he's suffered some criticism for this in the past. I mean, I know he did when he was first at Arsenal for his kind of languid demeanour. But he's obviously a very good footballer. In a situation like that, he's so unhurried and it's almost like you imagine in his head everything is just slowed down, and he's able, it just must be fantastic to be able to do that. And just unfortunately, we had to suffer one of his best performances, I'd imagine, this season against us yesterday, or when we played them a couple of days ago. And there wasn't really a lot you could do. I mean, Charlie will probably have to suffer seeing that goal a few more times this season when they run through goal of the month and goal of the season and all that sort of thing. But yeah, like you say, there was a lot of bodies between him, Charlie Daniels, and Artur Boris to do something about it, but we just couldn't. It was just, most people have said after the game that we just have to face up to the fact we were beaten by a better team, and that was, very much the one moment which symbolised why they were a better team. And I don't like to. I think this season I've learned to not respect or hold in awe the opposition. I think that's one of probably the biggest learning experiences of being in the Premier League, is some of these teams just simply aren't the big deal that you think they were, and we've beaten some of them, and I know some of them have been on bad runs of form and all that, but it certainly takes away that awestruck respect you have for them. But yeah, that was quality, and there's no two ways about it. And after that, it felt like a long way back, even though it was only 2-0. You sort of thought, well, this appears to only be going one way. And although we were still having plenty of possession and plenty of our usual rapid fire passing moves around the box, we weren't able to really unlock the door. They had a few more chances. Gabriel had another header. Walcott, like you said, was not in his best form in front of goal. He shot when he was put through. It was a bit selfish. Giroud was quite well placed. And then Giroud had a header which Boric spilt, and then Walcott pounced, but he missed that, but he was offside anyway. And so it went on. We largely dominated possession towards the end. I think Arsenal were letting us have the ball and thinking, well, if they do get a goal, we can probably get another one. Although, you get that thing where from 2-0 you get to 2-1 and the entire momentum of the game changes. But we didn't really have any decent chances. I think Richie had a dig from distance. Didn't trouble check it, didn't have enough power behind it. Murray had one where he kind of swept the ball and didn't make that good a contact with it, which slightly fooled check, but he was able to get his foot to it, and it went wide.
That was a good effort, actually, because I don't know what else he could have done there. I really don't. So I mean, it was on. I think it might have been cleared off the line even if Czech had missed it, but that was like, if that's the best chance, you've got to say, fair enough.
And then right at the end, Boris made a superb save from Walcott when he was played in by Ozil, kind of raking cross, and Boris, who's been playing a lot better recently, obviously, than he did for a little while in the autumn, blocked it. He blocked it as if the entire game was on the line. It must have been no more than a minute of the regulation time left. So it's good to see that. I mean, he obviously wasn't at fault for either of the goals, and he's been playing really well, and he's certainly steadied the ship in terms of his confidence recently. But what can you say? We've said all this already anyway. We stood up and were counted at Arsenal against a team that could win the league, and we go into the new year in a good position, much better than we could have been at the start of December. And obviously we've got the window coming, and overall the picture looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah. 40 points at the halfway stage. Well, sorry, that would have been good. 20 points at the halfway stage. With Aston Villa have gone now, which is good, because it's not going to be one of those seasons where everyone's on 20 points.
No.
Aston Villa need a ridiculous amount of points now to stay up.
They need, statistically, they are down, aren't they? I don't want to tempt fate, but no one's ever come back from that, have they? And the worst thing is they took 3 of their, they've got 8 points, they took 3 of them from us.
Yeah, but I mean, if we'd have played them now, we'd have beaten them. That was the first day of the season. Yeah. And Tim Sherwood as a manager just shouts at his players every week, and at that stage, it's the first game of the season. You can get them rolled up. You cannot get them rolled up for 18 consecutive games. You can for the first game of the season. That's all he's got. Throwing his gilet and shouting and moaning at the ref. That's his one managerial tactic. But so we played them first game, and they probably deserve to win overall that game, but I don't know. But they're gone. I would say Sunderland were gone if they weren't managed by Big Sam. I actually think I think we've got a better squad than Norwich, as was proven last season, because they haven't really added to it. But they are signing Stephen Naismith, so
That's the talk, isn't it?
do you think it's quite good? Well, it's on BBC, which is pretty much confirmed. So
Yeah.
I think it's likely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we speak, it's Sunderland are losing at home to Liverpool, so hopefully that will end with a Liverpool victory. So that will give us, well, potentially just one relegation place to be, well, not fought for, but fought against by the few teams that are down there. And we've got the window coming up. We've steadied the ship. I think probably 6 weeks ago, people were praying for the time to pass so we'd get to the window and can make a few signings. We're being linked with players left, right, and centre. Last season, we didn't sign anybody in the transfer window, and then we got Jones in on loan, which I don't think will be possible in the Premier League, that kind of activity. But I can't see Eddie signing too many players. I think if he signs 3, I'll be surprised. I think 2 would be what I would expect. Is there any positions you think we need strengthening? We're apparently signing this Iturb, I don't know how you pronounce his name, from Roma. That sounds like it could be a done deal. And of course that also throws up the prospect of somebody leaving. We seem to have quite a few wingers, Richie maybe. You got any idea what's going to happen?
No, like none really. But if we sign nobody, I won't be angry about it. I mean, I'd like to get some cover for King, because because Eddie's clearly insisting on that 4-5-1 fast-paced striker in the sort of Callum Wilson mould, and you can't play like that all season up front. So I'd like to see a plan B, because really we're looking at having Kermigan and Murray who are similar players, Ranty who's not really going to lead the line, and you're looking at just King on his own there running that, last shoulder defender, running the channels kind of striker. So I would like to see a signed striker, but then who do you get? I haven't got a clue.
The strikers we're being linked with, like Ross McCormack, Charlie Austin's always one that comes up. I mean, they're goal scorers, but they're not known for their pace, are they?
No, but at the same time, Kermigan wasn't known for his pace, Pittman wasn't known for his pace, but they did fine in an Eddie side last year. I think he can play it, but you just need 2, or you need an attacking midfielder, or I think if you signed a player like that, I think it'd be worth doing. But if you start King and Murray together, I think you're short of cover if one of them gets tired. So I would like to see a striker, and I also think we need some cover at centre back. Maybe someone who can play centre back and full back, because if you look, Daniel's getting injured. If you can imagine, that would be an absolute crisis.
Has Bennett gone back to Aston Villa?
Well, I don't know, but the fact that
he got injured, didn't he, Bennett?
Yeah.
Despite not setting foot on the pitch, I mean, that's not his fault. Daniels has been playing really well.
Yeah.
He went back recently to Aston Villa. I don't know how long the injury was, but if he's not available, then, like you say, we've got nobody to cover that position, have we?
Yeah, and then with Smith, because at the moment Francis is our best right back, and in my opinion is our best centre back as well.
He's been playing brilliant there recently.
And then you're looking at because I think Disdan's been sometimes played really well, but sometimes he's not been great. So I'd rather have someone absolutely solid. It obviously depends on Elphic's return as well.
Yeah, I think I'm pinning my hopes on Elphick coming back for the cup game against Birmingham. I've got no idea if that's what's going to happen. I just think that could be one where, if he is returning to fitness, he could get a start, couldn't he? So hopefully he will come back for that one.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I'd like to see him back. I mean, if I was Eddie, on recent performances, I'd put Elphick back into the team. I'd leave Francis as centre back. Smith's been in top form, and I think about dropping Cook, to be honest.
Yeah, Well,
That's
he
for
can
me
only
as it
play.
is, because he's a fantastic player, but I just don't know if you can take Francis out of that role.
I don't think he will take Francis out unless he has to now. I mean, most of his selection changes at the back have been down to injury. He did take Cook out, I think, at half time in one of the games. But yeah, generally, a player gets injured, then he has to have a bit of a reshuffle, and then as those players do well, he leaves them in. And so it continues. He'll have more to think about when Tommy's back. But yeah, like you said, Francis is playing really well at centre back at the moment. He played well at Arsenal, and so did Cook actually. I don't see him breaking that partnership up when Elphick returns. But you know,
I have quite specific criticism of Cook in that he takes himself out of the game by diving in more times than I would like. And it cost us the game at Norwich. It cost us a penalty against Leicester.
Oh yeah.
These are match-changing decisions where he just flies in, dives in, and even in the Palace game, he flew in against Zaha. And this time he got the ball because Zaha didn't see him diving in. But if Zaha had seen him diving in, it's so obvious. Zaha's comfortably got the guile to nip the ball over him and get a penalty. And that's my worry, and I don't get that with any of the other players, even Distam. It's the diving in and just 100% commitment to a tackle with no way of pulling out, often in dangerous places. That I don't like. But every other part of his game, I feel, he's a fantastic player, but I just, it worries me, and I don't get that worry from Elphick or Francis as centre back. I just don't.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a learning curve for Cook this season. He definitely did have a wobble around the time of Norwich and Leicester, and then he was playing on the other side that he normally plays in when Elphick went out of the team, and he's gone back to his normal position on the right hand side of the centre backs. And I think he said today in the newspaper he prefers playing on that side. Of course, we get excited thinking, who are we going to bring in? And I don't mind all the gossip because it keeps it interesting, and most of it's rubbish, but it's just you kind of wait and see what happens. But it's a lively part of the season with the transfer window. But of course, we forget now that we are vulnerable to big clubs coming in for our players as well. Do you think anyone could leave during this transfer window?
Everyone's talking about Richie, but I don't think Richie's been as effective as he was in the Championship. I mean, that's obviously going to happen because he stepped up a level. But to be honest, they've all, without exception, proven themselves at Premier League level. All of them. I mean, every single player in that team. They're probably not going to sign Borok or Distan because they're at that age, but all of them. So the good thing is that most of them are on long contracts, so we're going to get a whacking great fee. But I don't think Eddie would sell anyone that he can't replace, and I certainly don't think we need to sell like we have before.
No, I think it'd have to be a magnificent opportunity for one of our players for them to tear themselves away from playing for Eddie in the January window. I mean, Richie was linked with United, which could mean anything. But I guess if Man United came in for him, then he's not going to turn that down. But I can't see that happening. If Everton came in for him, for example, they're a big club, but you think, well, would he leave Bournemouth to go there?
Would he leave in January, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
He might leave in the summer to go there if we were to go down.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you'd say, fair enough. You've proven yourself at Premier League level. But I would be surprised I'll be very surprised if we sell someone to anyone below, say, Tottenham grade or below.
Yeah.
So,
and you get the feeling they won't want to have their marquee signing for the transfer window being, well, not an unknown, but a not very well-known player from Bournemouth.
But the best thing about all of this is they're on long contracts, but also they're all British, which in the Premier League means you get about 40 million quid. So you look at, there's so many absolutely mediocre Premier League footballers who've gone for vast sums of money just because they're English and homegrown. So if someone does leave, it's going to be for a massive fee because of that combination of things. And I don't think Eddie will sell anyone without having a lined up replacement. So, to be honest, I'd be surprised if someone does go, but I don't think it'll be a disaster if they do. The only player who would be season ending, in my opinion, would be Harry Arter.
Oh, definitely.
If Harry Arter was to be sold, I would expect us to get. It's Eddie Howe, so maybe he'll make. I don't know, maybe he'll make someone else into a world beater, but that would be the only one where I'd be like that. For me, that's worst case scenario. That would be worse than selling Wilson or selling Richie, in my opinion, selling Arthur.
I totally agree. I mean, there's been a lot of focus on King and Stanislas being at the heart of our turnaround in fortunes, but I think most people, especially Bournemouth fans, recognise that the return of Arter to the team and to full fitness has had a huge impact on our fortunes. I mean, I thought he was our best player against Arsenal. He doesn't look in any way out of his depth in that company, and it's just unbelievable. A player that can go down into non-league, and we buy him for a pittance from Woking, and now he looks like he can cut it with the best in the Premier League, not even in a way that he's kind of struggled to adapt. He's come straight back into the team and almost without a hitch has shown how good a player he can be, hasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he runs the show, and he is the reason for the upturn in results. He just is. But whether that's unique to the Bournemouth side that he's in, I mean, I'd be very surprised if it is. But that for me is the only one that I would be worried about. Even selling Richie, we've got other good wingers. We've got other good wingers who are injured who could come in back into the team long term. We might have a couple of months where we're short, but we've got the squad depth for Richie. He wouldn't sell Wilson without a massive fee, and he's injured anyway, so I'd be very surprised again. So just the only one that does give me the absolute night terrors is selling Arthur.
Yeah, well, let's hope you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night at the end of January and have this nightmare realised. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the recent revelations regarding financial fair play, which I always consider to be something of a murky world. In terms, I mean, football finance has never been the clearest or the cleanest financial operation, and this thing has been introduced to try and, ostensibly to try and save clubs from themselves in terms of piling up the debt and then having to pay for it in more ways than one a few years down the line. We have gone somewhat higher than the 6 million deviation that you're apparently allowed from the financial fair play when you're in the Championship. The rules, I'm afraid I can't reel them off. I did have a little look the other day, but it's fair to say I can't remember them all. And so we're going to be hit with a fine. The only figure I've seen is 10 million, and that was in a newspaper, so I don't know where that came from. I don't know about you, but there's been a lot of verbal protest from inside the club. Even Eddie Howe's had a bit to say, and from the fans as well on various platforms about how the system's unfair and it prevents smaller ambitious clubs from making any progress. And I suppose there is some truth in that, but my overriding feeling is that I hope we're not next on a long list of teams that have shot for the stars and then ended up, tumbling down the leagues in total financial disarray.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look. This whole getting fined for last season has made me actually, because before we were like pushing the boundaries of it, I thought it was probably quite a good thing. But actually, having looked into it and how it's run, you're looking at the purpose of it you have to question. Because so there's no complete results out yet for last season, 2014-2015. Okay, so the only complete set of results for as a league is 2013-2014 that are publicly available and on the internet. Now, in terms of financial fair play, profit and loss, guess which three teams did if there was a financial fair play ranking? Guess which teams were top for 2013-2014?
Is this in the Premier League as well?
No, sorry, this is in the Championship, 2013-2014.
Top. It's hard to say. Leeds?
So, right, well, I'll give you a clue, right? Right, in fact, I'll just tell you straight, right? Blackpool, number 1, okay, relegated. Number 2, I'm not joking, Wigan, relegated. Number 3, Yeovil Town, relegated, right? Number 4, Watford, right? And okay, Watford fans are just the worst fans on the internet.
It's not all of them though, George, which is what I always say about Watford. We do have the needle with the Watford fans over probably the last 12 months, but it is, there's definitely a section, as they say, of the Watford fans, but it's probably only a very small percentage. But anyway, go on.
Right, well, okay, well, so that small percentage can shut up, because that is not a sustainable model of. Let's not forget, 2 years ago they loaned 14 Italian players and tried to win the league with the Udinese 11. They bent the rules themselves. They made exactly zero profit, which is funny because they dumped it all on Granada and Udinese as if this is a financial fair play model where your owner owns 3 clubs and then just loans you them for free. You know, you get Vidra for free on loan because Udinese can take the loss. It's a nonsense to suggest that Watford have any moral high ground. And everything I'm saying about this, about financial fair play, okay, it's important to say that I hate that we made £10 million losses, £10 million loss. I hate that you have to spend it. The Championship as a whole is a financial cesspool of ruin. It is. It is extraordinarily bad, okay? I'm not saying that it's fine that you're running up these losses. I'm not saying that any club is fine. What I am saying is that no club in the league, apart from maybe Norwich, has a moral high ground here. That's the key thing. Because if you're looking at the financial fair play being intended to make clubs sustainable, it doesn't. Because take Ipswich fans, or another one who've been all over the internet saying, oh yeah, Bournemouth cheated to get promoted, all this nonsense, right? They've lost 88 million quid over 5 years, okay? You need a benefactor to lose 88 million quid over 5 years. If you look at the debt, Bolton Wanderers, fair enough, they're in administration, £200 million worth of debt. QPR, £180 million worth of debt. Brighton, another one, who suddenly think it's financial fair play to have a £120 million stadium appear out of thin air. None of these clubs have a moral high ground. And our loss is mid-table. Our capital spend in terms of wages is mid-table. And you're looking at the key one where we're down is wages against turnover. And if that's the indicator rather than a loss, if 2 teams make £10 million loss, neither team is sustainable without a benefactor. That's just a fact. And if you're looking at finding the smaller team, then you need to question if the purpose of the system is to keep minnows and to keep the big clubs at the top. That's what it's made me think.
Yeah, now I know you're not qualified to answer this question, George, but if we get a £10 million fine slapped on us, do you think it would stand up in court if we challenged it?
Well, I think there's a lot of evidence. If you can prove your wage spend is because I mean, as you say, I'm a stamp dealer. I'm not a lawyer, right? If your wage spend is mid-table, if your actual capital loss in terms of amount is mid-table, and yet you're the only club that's been fined when you've got Fulham and Forest spending more on one player than your entire squad cost, Brighton Stadium appearing out in there and suddenly they're fine in these regulations, it's not a fair system. And I'm not saying that it's fine that all these clubs are losing it. I'm saying that financial fair play is not the system to solve that problem. It just isn't. It seems to be racked in favour of the bigger clubs. It just does. And even you look at Brighton, they were like, oh, we only spent X amount, but we spent £3 million on Callum Wilson. They spent £3 million on Sam Baldock. That's why we got promoted. It's the decision. It's not the actual amount spent. It's the management and the how well run the club is.
Yeah, it isn't what you do. It's the way you do it.
Leicester spent £8 million on Jermaine Beckford a few years ago. Didn't get promoted. Bolton, when they came down, spent a lot of money on new players. Didn't get promoted. Cardiff, I dread to think how much Cardiff spent to get promoted, and then they only lasted a season. So it's not. It's a system racked in favour of the big clubs, and you have to quite right. If we were one of 12 clubs with a big fine, you've got to say, fair enough, they're solving the problem, they're taking steps against big losses, right? Absolutely fine. I'd accept it. I would be fine with it. But if you look at everyone making 10 million quid loss, Ipswich averaging a 10 million quid loss, right? And yet we're the only one that's been fined this year. Is that a fair system? And that's the worst thing about it for me.
So I don't think I really need to ask you this next question, but in the light of this revelation, does this diminish last season's achievements for you?
Well, if anything, it makes it better because you've been promoted with the 11th highest wage bill in the league. It does. It doesn't diminish the achievement of Howe at all because, if anything, because I'm sure Deming could have put more money in if he wanted, but he's limited by the turnover Howe, and if you're promoted with a mid-table wage spend and a mid-table, in fact, we're almost top of it. I mean, there's largely the Adam Lallana factor. We're almost top of the league in terms of net spend. It's a huge achievement to get promoted. It just is to get promoted. And as I say, Cardiff, Leeds, all these big teams have been throwing vast sums of money at it that we just haven't. Maybe we've spent more on wages, but to use wages against turnover as your mechanism to calculate whether you've played fairly or not, that is the fundamental flaw in financial fair play. Because that literally penalises small clubs and gives the bigger clubs a benefit. And that the only reason to pick wages against turnover is not a sustainability thing, because a £10 million loss is a £10 million loss. You need a benefactor. It is there to maintain the status quo. That's the only reason you would pick that as an indicator.
And so, last thing on this, when we first started talking about it, I mentioned that my overriding reaction to the information that's come out in the past few days is regarding the potential that we are yet again putting the future of the club at risk. And, there's a lengthy list. Portsmouth, you got Wigan, you mentioned Blackpool as well earlier. I mean, it just goes on and on and on of teams that have, shot for the stars and come tumbling down at a rapid rate. And we've been there. Well, we haven't shot for the stars before, but we've certainly been in the gutter. Does that worry you at all?
It doesn't, purely because of the players we're signing. In terms of, if you look at the teams that are in real trouble now, Bolton, QPR with their finances, Blackpool are a terrible example, but Wigan, they were signing older players on the decline. They're signing players that 29, 30, aren't really on their last big contract, aren't going to get another move. And QPR are absolutely criminal for that. And you look at who we're signing and the average age. There's no one who isn't highly saleable in that squad, really. Mostyn said they've got relegation clauses. We've now got the parachute payments. If it was like 6 seasons into a massive wage spend, and we're still in the Championship, you say, yeah, probably at risk. But even if you look at the debt, last time it was released, we were about 12th in terms of net debt. Huddersfield had more debt. Charlton, Reading, Forest, Middlesbrough, Blackburn, Ipswich, Brighton, QPR, Bolton, all had more debt than us. And the other thing is, Deming isn't just spending on players, okay? He's not just spending on players as in a pump and dump, get promoted and then sell it to someone. Why would he build the training pitch? Why would he build the recovery centre, whatever it's that strike building's called? Why would he build a car park? Why would he invest so heavily in infrastructure if he wasn't in it for the long haul? So that's the key point, is if financial fair play is designed to make clubs sustainable, it's calculated on the wrong mechanism.
Well, George, those reassuring words about Maxim Deming are definitely what I need to hear. I feel a slight modicum of reassurance that all will be well. So let's hope that it continues to be a successful model that others look at and think, no, they've done it. I wonder how they managed to pull that off, whilst scratching their heads and then blaming us for diving for penalties and red cards. It's been great to have you back on the show. First time this season, but hopefully we'll hear your voice more than once before the final whistle in May. So happy New Year to you, and enjoy the rest of the season.
Thanks very much. You too.
Great to have George back on the podcast, and hopefully he can bring us more good fortune now he's returned from those United States. Only a few days until our first fixture of 2016, a year which, if it proves half as good as 2015 for our heroes in red and black, will be more than satisfactory. Happy New Year to you all, up the cherries in all departments, and goodbye.
All Departments is sponsored by the White Bear Micropub on Southbourne Grove, the perfect pre- and post-game venue to chat about the game, and only a 25-minute walk to the ground, or there's a bus stop right outside. Wear your AFCB shirt on any match day and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.